and coming in, so I appreciate that. So first of all, when we talk about these presenters, what do these titles mean? It's important to know that the folks that are on the phone today, Assistant Commissioner Killingsworth and Deputy Commissioner Allen, they make decisions about IDD service programs here in Tennessee. And there are some of the people that are really listening to this feedback as we start to make decisions about how to make sure that we're doing the best job we can to support people all across Tennessee with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Not only does that mean people who are currently in the programs, but also those people who are waiting for services right now. As we know, there are thousands of people who currently would like to receive services, but have not had the ability to do so. And we're here to explain these new changes and also listen to your questions and hopefully be able to provide you with some answers. So now we'll get to today's presentation. When we're talking about our discussion today for the course of the next couple of minutes, we'll want to give you all a quick review of what the proposal is. Then we want to talk about your input so far. What are the things you guys have already told us about what things are important to see in a single system, and what are the things you like and don't like about your current services, and how we might be able to look to change some of those or consider those things as we look to make changes. We'll talk a little bit about what will change and what will stay the same in a single system. And then we'll talk a lot about what happens next and how to make sure you can stay involved as we go through this process. So first, we're going to do just a quick review. I think it's important. We may have people who were not on the phone for the last presentation we did in August, but I want to kind of go over where we are right now, how we've gotten to this point, and what we've talked about up to this point. So some of the steps we've taken so far started back in July of 2020, when TennCare and DIDD worked together and released a concept paper. This concept paper really let people know about the proposed plan to create a single system, what this plan was, what the values of this plan were, and what are the things that we see are important drivers as we move forward in improving the lives of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities all across Tennessee. Also, we talked a little bit about what the state is right now. What is our current state for services and supports for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities? And right now, Tennessee has 3 different programs for people with IDD. We have the 1915C waivers. These are the waivers that sometimes people call the waivers operated by DIDD, the DIDD waivers. Others know them by their name: the statewide waiver, the self-determination waiver, and the CAC waiver, or comprehensive aggregate capped waiver. Then there's the Employment and Community First Choices program. This was a program for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities that was started in 2016. Finally, we have the Intermediate Care Facility People with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities model. And this is a more intensive model for people who require active treatment. And we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. So we had 3 different services, 3 different sets of rules, and 3 programs that were basically all trying to provide services to the same group of Tennesseans. And we had an idea. Why are we doing this 3 different ways? And why are these 3 different ways not aligned at all? One group is not talking to the other group. So what if we could do something different? And this is where this new idea came by. In this new proposal, first of all, DIDD, who is a state agency that has been charged with taking oversight of all services for people with disabilities, would take over that administrative oversight of all 3 programs. Currently, right now, DIDD only has oversight over the 1915C waivers. This would include now that under DIDD oversight, the Employment and Community First Choices program and those intermediate care facilities for individuals with intellectual disabilities. The new idea also envisions that this would be in a managed care model. And what that means is that managed care organizations would be a part of providing those services and paying for those services, much like they do right now for people in all 3 programs when it comes to their physical and behavioral health needs. So what this new idea would mean is that for the first time, the funding and oversight for all of the programs would be the same. And this would be for the very first time. This proposal, you'll hear it called an integration. We've called it an IDD integration. The proposal is called that because we believe that if all 3 programs work together, if they're all talking to each other. And we're doing things to really streamline services and supports across all three programs that we can, one, reduce some of the burden that these programs cause by having three different sets of regulations for the same group of people, and that we can reduce those regulations, free up more resources, and ultimately serve more people, including those thousands of people across Tennessee who are waiting for services. As I mentioned before, the first step we took was we released the concept paper. Then we really wanted to let people know more about what we were thinking and also give them an opportunity to ask questions. So we held presentations that really explained what was in the concept paper, kind of fleshed out some of those ideas, gave people an opportunity to ask questions, and then also gathered the feedback. So those presentations included one focused on family-focused presentation as well, so that we were making sure that not only were we including families in the conversation, but we were presenting the information that mattered most to them. I talked about how it was important for us to tell you what our ideas were so that you could help us. Because what we really want to really make sure that you all understand is that we really value your feedback and we want to know what you all think of this plan. So we developed an online form for feedback, and you'll see a small picture of it over there. And this form helped us understand what are those values that are important to you? What are the concerns you have with this concept paper? And what are some of the recommendations or questions you have about the IDD integration? So we got to the point where we advanced the concept, and then we developed we gathered the input, and then we developed a proposed plan. And that's where we're at right now, is the gathering input on that second step down that ladder of the steps taken so far. So when we talk about all of the feedback we collected, we reviewed that feedback and drafted the overview that we're going to be discussing today. We received hundreds of pages of feedback, and a lot of it came from families in both the 1915C waivers and the Employment and Community First Choices program. And that was great because we really wanted to hear what these folks said and what they valued about their current services and supports and what they would like to see in the new system. So we're going to talk a little bit now about what that feedback showed us. And just so you all know, on that website that we that we showed you on a slide about 2 or 3 slides ago, you can find a stakeholder feedback summary on that page that kind of goes through some of the feedback that we received. First of all, we asked you to tell us what you thought about the proposal to integrate the 3 different programs. And like I mentioned before, we received hundreds of pages of comments and formal letters from families, providers, advocacy groups, MCOs, clinical providers, really from people all across the service delivery system and all different types of stakeholders. Here are the things we heard. First of all, we heard that many are worried that the changes may mean less services or less staff. Most people also do not want to change programs or their support coordinators. They like to have things, they would prefer to keep things when it comes to support coordination in the current program they're in. They would prefer to keep things the same. And fine, we heard a lot about really wanting person-centered services. People want their services to be tailored to their own needs and goals. They're not looking for a blanket service. They're looking for something that helps them achieve their own individual goals and outcomes, whatever they may be. So then we gathered all of this input. We took a very good look at all of the responses we got, and we drafted the new overview document. So here is what's going to change on July 1, 2021, after we reviewed that feedback and really drafted our next document. First of all, it's important to stress that there will be no changes to programs or support coordination. So on July 2021, no programs will change and no support coordinators will change. So what does that mean? This means that you will stay in the program that you're in now and you will keep your support coordinator. That means that if you are in the statewide waiver, you'll be in the statewide waiver. If you're in the CAC waiver, you'll be in the CAC waiver. If you're in Employment and Community First Choices, you'll remain in that program. And the support coordination model that you have right now, whether it's in the SD waiver, a DIDD case manager, whether it's an independent support coordinator in the CAC or statewide waiver, or an MCO care coordinator in the ECF Choices program, that support coordinator model and support coordinator will not change. And I got a little ahead of myself because there will be no changes to support coordinator. And that is, of course, that person who helps you choose the services you receive. And those are the people those are what they're called, and those are who they are in each of the separate programs. Also, on July 1, 2021, no benefits will be eliminated. And that's an important thing to say is that no benefits will be eliminated on July 1, 2021. Another thing is there will be no reductions in services. On July 21, 2021, the amount of services you have and your expenditure cap, which is the amount of services of money your services cost, that will not change as well. So you will still, your services will still be subject to the same expense cap that they are currently subject to right now in the current program that you are in. Also, we'll be providing new options because we heard a lot about this. One of the options we'll be looking to expand is consumer direction. Consumer direction will start being available in all programs. Currently in the DIDD waivers, consumer direction is only allowed in the SD waiver, and it is not available to those who are in the statewide waiver or the CAC waiver. That will change. And when we talk about consumer direction, this is when we're talking about the ability for you to hire and fire your own staff rather than working with a provider agency. So you will be responsible for directing your services. Also, if this is a new option you would like to partake, you should ask your support coordinator to learn more about this and understand and really learn how to understand more about consumer direction and the benefits or the concerns that may come with that model. Another new option, technology. Your person-centered planning team will start helping you explore enabling technology if you want to use it. And this is really important because one of the things that we want to make sure that everyone understands is that technology options can be available for so many people. And we're not just talking about one type of technology here. One of the things that we hear a lot of is that when people hear enabling technology, it means, oh, there's going to be a caregiver on a camera as opposed to far away, as opposed to a person in my house. That is one option, but there are hundreds of options. And we want to make sure that everyone is exploring all of the different options with technology and how a person might be supported through that. Also, these technology options are things that can allow a person to have more control and independence. So what we will do is we will be doing what's called an enabling technology assessment. What are your needs? What are the things you want to achieve in your life? And how can technology maybe get you there? And then you and your team, and this is important to decide, to stress, that you and your team can decide how you want to use enabling technology. Just a little while ago, maybe in the last 30 minutes, DIDD released a new video on our Facebook page, and it is about a gentleman in Jamestown, Tennessee, so a very rural area of Tennessee, who is using a technology called a telehealth and Station MD to be able to get to be able to see a doctor and get his prescriptions refilled from the comfort of his rocking chair outside of his home. These are the kinds of different technologies that are available that we want to make sure people are understanding. Obviously, it would be very far for him to be able to go see a doctor and have to wait for a primary care, but he was able to do all of this on an iPad with the support of his support cord, his DSP on his front porch in Jamestown, Tennessee. So I'd encourage you all to kind of look and think broadly about what those options are and really how they might benefit you or your loved one. Also, another important part about this new model is we'll be taking a good look at residential and day services. If you are in the 1915C waivers, then you know that most people's services are split into two parts. There are the residential services, and these services cover approximately 18 hours a day and really are covered the time that a person spends in their home. And then we have something called day services, and that's another 6 hours a day. And those services are designed to help a person, support a person in their community, in employment, engaging the way they want to engage in the community. While the concept was a wonderful idea back in the day, what we've learned now is that this can make it harder to make sure that each person gets to do what they want, when they want, and for how long they want. If we're saying that these services at their home are different from these services in the community, it really leads to confusion and makes things and handcuffs people in many ways to a type of model that doesn't allow the flexibility we would like them to have. So what we're looking to do here is combine these services so that providers can offer the support you need when you want it, where you want it, how you want it, and make sure that they can get paid for it as well, because that is very important too. Really, the most important thing is that you'll be able to spend your time how you want during the day. You will be able to, it'll give you the flexibility, and there won't be these special boxes carved out for each type of service. It's important to note, though, that all of the residential and day services options that are currently available will still be available. We're just really looking here to pay for them in a different way and make sure that we're giving people the flexibility they have so that they can choose to spend their day the way they want to. Another change that we're looking to make is a new model for therapy, behavior, and nutrition. First of all, it's important to note that we are going to continue to meet the therapy, behavior, and nutrition needs of the people that we support. That is not changing. Those needs are important, and those needs will continue to be met. And therapy, behavior, and nutrition services are going to still be available in all of the programs. What we want to look towards, though, is that when we'll have the professionals assess their needs and develop a treatment plan. Then what we would like to do is make sure that they're training and supporting your caregivers, whether those are family you live with or paid support, to make that treatment a part of your everyday life. What we want to see is that a person is learning, is having access to the treatment that really makes a difference in their lives, not during 1 hour a week or during that appointment, but during everything they do during the day, and make sure that it's a part of their everyday routines. Because in the end, if you're working on something 24 hours a day as opposed to 1 hour a week, you'll be able to make those changes so much quicker and so much more effectively. Right now, this is how the service works in ECF Choices. So this is not a new thing for us. This is something that we're already doing in the Employment and Community First Choices program. And what we're looking is that next year we will start this model in the 1915C waivers as well, because we have seen great success with this model in ECF Choices. We'll also look for a new model in nursing services. Nursing services and needs will continue to be met. That is a very important thing that we want to say. If those nursing needs will continue to be met. And these nursing services will still be available. What we also want to do here is make sure that many of you all know that nursing, skilled nursing is is as much of a shortage as DSPs are in our service delivery system. So what we want to make sure we're doing is focusing those nursing needs on the really important things. So what we want to do is make sure that nurses are helping to train and support your paid or unpaid caregiver to do the routine medical tasks for you. Things like checking your blood sugar, pricking your finger, or giving you a breathing treatment. Things that oftentimes many of us are helping our family members do already, or people are doing themselves. Also, we want to make sure that telehealth and remote support is available for things, like I mentioned. We have that great telehealth video that can really show you how that service can be applied to anyone. The reason we want to do that is we want to make sure that nurses are available and can focus on those more complex nursing tasks. For instance, ventilator care, those things that really do require skilled nursing to do on a daily basis, so that we're preserving and making sure we have those resources for those very complex tasks that must be performed by a nurse. So how will services work? First of all, this is, sorry about that, in all three programs, everyone is going to get an assessment to figure out how much support they need. In the 1915C waivers, we will use the support intensity scale, which is also called the SIFS. And that is something that's being used today, also not only in the 1915C waivers, but also in 20 other states. Also, everyone is going to get a technology assessment, because we think it's important that everyone at least get an assessment and see what's possible when it comes to technology and how it might help you if you want to use technology as part of your support plan. After your assessments, your support coordinator will help you put together a person-centered support plan that meets all of your needs, just like you do now. So that's not changing. What will change is that we'll be combining the supports intensity scale and the text assessment so that we're looking at these two things as we develop that person-centered plan. We'll look at different ways of how supports can be provided, and people who need more paid supports will get them. So as we said before, this is not an area where we're looking to quote unquote replace DSPs with technology. If people need more paid supports, they will get them. Also, in all programs, your managed care organization will review, oops, sorry about that. Your managed care organization will review and approve your person-centered support plan. So once that person-centered support plan is finished, your MCO, your health plan that you currently have right now, will review that and approve it. This is what happens currently in the Employment and Community First Choices program today. So this is not new. This is something that is already happening in the ECF Choices program. Now this process will happen in all of the programs. And DIDD will oversee that whole process for all programs. And DIDD will step in and review those support plans if, for some reason, we need to make sure that any types of service authorizations are appropriate. And DIDD is going to help make sure you get the services you need. So we've talked right now about some of the changes that are happening in our waiver programs. Now we want to talk very briefly about the changes that we're making in the ICF IID programs. First of all, important to note that on July 1, 2021, nothing will change for people who are currently receiving services in an intermediate care facility for people with intellectual disabilities. So for those people who are currently living in an ICF IID, nothing is changing on July 1. So we talk about that, but then I want to back up a little bit more. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what an ICF IID is, these are places where 4 or more people live together, and each person must receive active treatment, and that means that they're getting special services for their intellectual disability. They're kind of like residential services and waiver programs, but they're not home and community-based. In fact, an ICF IID is an institutional model of service. Under federal law, they are considered medical institutions like a nursing home, but for people specifically for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities so that they can get specialized services. As we've mentioned before, we want to make sure that everyone who wants to live in the community has an opportunity to do so. And home and community-based services are such an amazing way that we are allowing people, we're giving people the support they need to be able to engage in their communities. So one of the things we want to make sure is that people who are going into that medical institution model, that ICF IID model, are people who really need that model, which means they have very significant behavioral challenges or very complex medical needs, because that is who that service is intended to be for. Also, we will look to make short-term placements there that while we work together to plan for transition into the community. First and foremost, our goal is that everybody can live in the community and have the independence and the lives that they envision for themselves. So while we work to see if that is something that can happen, a short-term placement may be the best choice for a person in an ICF IID. Also important to remember that there are only about 1,000 total beds or slots for people in ICF IID. And when we talk about who will be coming into these facilities in the future, we're going to make decisions about the enrollment by an interagency review committee that will be led by DIDD, but will also have participation with TennCare and the MCOs. And the reason we want to do that is we want to make sure that people receive services in the right place for them, in the most integrated place for them, that we're making sure that people have access to community resources, and really making sure that we're giving them the services they need in the most integrated setting possible. And an important part of that will be looking into the future. We'll look at everyone who is living in an ICF IID to see who can live in the community and who wants to live in the community. People will be given materials to make an informed choice about living in the community. We want people to understand who are living there, what they're receiving now, and what they could potentially receive in the community, so that they have all of the information they need to make an informed choice about where they want to live. And for those who would like to be living in the community and have more access to community living, we will work with them to make this transition and make it successfully and seamlessly. So now we'll talk a little bit about the outcomes we expect through this integration. First of all, this new system will make sure that your unique needs are met through person-centered planning. I can't stress this enough. It is very important that we are making sure that we are individualizing services, that we are involving the person, and that the person's goals and life they would like to live is being considered in all of the decisions we make about their services. There is a phrase, nothing about me without me. And we want to make sure that their goals and outcomes are truly involved in this process. This new system will respect your independence and will respect your independence when you choose support from technology and from friends and family. We want to make sure that one of the things that when I've been out talking sometimes with some of our self-advocates is they feel that they are over-supported. They want to be able to engage in technology, and they want to be able to rely on their friends and families. I'm not saying that this is a blanket statement for everyone, but I've met many people who would like that. And we want to make sure that this new system is respecting that when people want that. If they don't want that, we want to make sure that the new system is respecting that as well. This new system will also use limited dollars and staff better so we can support more people. I don't think that anyone who has a loved one who's in services doesn't know that we are currently experiencing a DSP workforce shortage and crisis, and that there is unprecedented DSP turnover across the nation. And what we want to make sure we're doing is we're using those limited dollars, because we're also in a budget crisis as well. And so there is not an unlimited pot of money that we have for services. We want to make sure we're using those limited dollars and those very precious staff resources in the most effective way we can and the best way we can to make sure that we can support all of the people who are needing and wanting services. So what happens next? First of all, as I've mentioned, your feedback is the most important part of this process now. We want you to send your ideas to DIDD and TennCare. So you'll see this link on the website for IDD integration. If you go to that site, there'll be a button at the top, and that will take you to a feedback form where you can go through and provide us with feedback, specific feedback, questions, concerns, and recommendations about each area. Also, we will be starting work groups around areas of focus. We really want to hear what people, what our stakeholders have to say, and it'll be important for them to have an opportunity to really work with us around these areas. We will develop the proposed amendments, and then we'll send them to the federal government for approval. We must have federal approval to be able to start a new system. But once we get it, we will start the single system, looking to do that on July 1, 2021. And once we start that system, we're not just wiping our hands and saying it's done. We are always looking at our services and supports and trying to figure out how we can make them better, how we can improve them, and where things may not have happened the way we wanted them to. So even after we start this new program, we will be continually looking for ways that we can improve services and supports and make things better. So this is the time where we need you to help us understand your perspective. Whether you're a person supported, a family member, or a provider, we would like your input. So we have that document that we've put up on our website. The couple of things we're asking you to do that are different from the last time is we would like you to select the specific section of the document you're commenting on. And when we're talking about the document, we're talking about that overview document we put out just a few weeks ago. So when you are going through that document, there are different sections that are kind of underlined. And you'll find all of those on the online form. So we'll ask you to select the section and then select the page number of the document you're commenting on. That way we can look at it very closely. And let us know whether you're expressing a concern, asking a question, or sharing a recommendation. And please be as specific as you can. I don't like services and supports doesn't tell us what you don't like about services and supports. So be specific. I don't like this change. That doesn't tell us about what are the things that are concerning you. So be as specific as you can so we can really understand what your concern is, what your recommendation is, or what your question is so we can answer it. All right, and with that, we are done. I am done with the presentation. I am going to stop sharing my screen so I can see the chat box. And like I said, we have Jordan Allen and Patty Killingsworth on here so that we can answer questions and hopefully provide you with some answers. So, okay. First question, sorry, I'm scrolling down. There are a lot of I can hear you. What are your plans to address the DSP shortage and non-competitive wages? If these issues aren't resolved before integration begins, then we are transferring a critical unresolved program from one program to another. I'm going to give this to Deputy Commissioner Jordan Allen.
Thanks, Kara. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great question, and I think it's kind of a layered response. And certainly, Patty, jump in or join me as I kind of outline it, at least the components that we know are intended to address the DSP shortage. So what we know from past experience and certainly from what the department and TennCare and ultimately the legislature have done with DSP wages thus far is that addressing the DSP wage issue or a DSP shortage is not necessarily a wage issue. Certainly wage is important as it is to any and all of us, but more important probably is to figure out how to align the system in such a way that we're maximizing the talents that direct support professionals bring to people supported, that we're figuring out how to leverage the people that we do have in the system working in a direct care capacity in the most appropriate way. And another huge component for us is, are we giving them the tools that they need to, one, bring value to their job, but two, to be able to have maximum impact for the people that they're supporting. And so as we continue to kind of concept this whole single system design approach, maximizing both the role of the direct support professional and leveraging the availability of the DSPs that we do have in the system is kind of a foundational component of that. So it ties into, I referenced training, it ties into how agencies are supporting people currently and how we may be able to better support people in a less staff-intensive environment. And please understand when I say that, that we're not intending in any way, in fact, we've gone out of our way at this point to communicate that people, when people have direct support needs, it certainly is our intention, as services are aligned today, they will be tomorrow, that those needs are met in a direct way. I think what we've realized, certainly what the DIDD enabling technology pilot projects have shown us, what we've seen even nationwide, is that people are oftentimes better supported, certainly desire to be supported in less direct ways when and where they're able to do so. Enabling technology has been a huge component to that. And what we've noticed is that as people are exposed to the availability of different service arrangements, direct and indirect, as natural support networks are actually developed, as the direct support professionals working with people become more tuned in to how to facilitate those relationships, how to identify and then design programs that support people in their goals for independence, that people are generally happier, and the demand, the direct support demand, kind of proportionately decreases from there. And so I think that our approach to it, certainly we're going to continue to look at any and every opportunity that we have to encourage agencies to increase the direct support professional wage, to professionalize that field to the extent that people want to participate in that skill development component, to train DSPs and honestly to train agencies to utilize their DSP workforces in more efficient ways. And the good news with all of that is not only does it help alleviate the DSP shortage, but what it does also is increase the quality of supports and ultimately the quality of life of people receiving services.
I think that was really well stated, Jordan, and you covered the waters really well. I want to thank the folks who brought the question up because we certainly agree with you that one of the most critical pieces of the quality of services that we can provide is making sure that we have a consistent and well-trained workforce to be able to deliver those services. It is a priority of both TennCare and DIDD. As Jordan says, the department has been working on this for a really long time, right, and has made substantial progress in terms of increasing the wage of that workforce. Together, TennCare and DIDD have a comprehensive strategy that includes, as Jordan mentioned, making sure that we provide good competency-based training that really equips the staff well to do the work and to support people in ways that help them achieve the outcomes that really matter to them. We're also working with providers to help develop their capacity around the recruitment and retention of the right workforce to deliver these services. And then we're going to continue our efforts around wages. We're going to do that in a value-based way, really trying to compensate the workforce, especially when they are better equipped and able to demonstrate those better outcomes. I think that will keep all of the right people in the field going forward. So this is not a 1915C waiver issue. It is an issue that affects the service delivery system broadly, not just in Tennessee, but all across the country, and it will continue to be a one that is top of mind for us going forward.
Okay, Patty, I'm going to let you take this next question too. Is it possible to wait until after December 31st, 2020 to submit the amendments to CMS so there is more time to resolve issues like how value-based payments to providers will be determined and how CIS scores will be used to determine services with participation in the decision-making process by people affected, their families, ISCs, and advocates?
That's a great question, and so let me start with, remember, as we've consistently talked about, is that the alignment of the programs is going to take place over the course of time, right? So not everything is going to happen on July 1st. We probably will not be making changes to the reimbursement structure on July 1st. It is going to take some more time, and where things need more time, we're going to take the time to do that in a very thoughtful way. We are going to be submitting our waiver amendments to CMS for the integration itself, right? For the bringing these services into the managed care program, really having DIDD in that critical oversight role, and beginning to make some of the person-centered changes over the course of time that we want. But that doesn't mean that some things that may take more time or that we're not going to take the time to do those, and that we're not going to have the opportunity to be sure that we're receiving thoughtful input into that process. I might encourage people to go back and look on DIDD's website at the presentation that we put together that's a little bit more provider focused. It probably gets a little bit more into some of those timeframes, and I think will provide some reassurance that the things that need more time will take time to do those things and get that input.
Thank you very much, Patty. The next question, I'm actually going to stay with you for the next question as well. With the proposed nursing cutbacks, will you update the program to allow 2 PAs who are needed at the same time to support the individual? Patty, you're muted.
Sorry. Let me just start by reassuring people. We're not talking about nursing cutbacks, right? We are talking about making sure that the nursing needs of each and every person who is in the program continue to be met, and doing that in the most efficient and effective way that we can, also taking into account the nursing shortage that we've talked about. So I think here I would say that the primary message is we're going to make sure that people receive the supports they need to be able to do the things that they want to do to achieve the outcomes that really matter to them. And I don't really want to get into what that's going to look like person by person, because it really is an individualized planning process. We are not looking to cut back on nursing. We are looking to target nursing in the most effective way that we can. And we'll do that on a person by person basis in a very thoughtful way to make sure that people have the supports that they need.
Thank you, Patty. I'm going to go to Jordan for the next one. Are the rates going to be uniform across all programs? Jordan, would you like to address this?
Sure, thanks, Tara. So I think as a baseline statement, what we can say is eventually, yes, once we fully develop and implement a single program approach, the intent is to have a single menu of services and a single set of rates supporting those services. I think that we're not, well, I don't think, as we've said already, we're not at that point yet. And so 7/1 of next year, we're going to continue to maintain separate programs between the ECF and the 1915C programs. And so you won't see a substantive leveling of rates, for instance, for services. We certainly are going to continue to pull in the supports from both programs that have proved to be very effective in helping people achieve their own desired outcomes. And certainly we've heard a lot from families, from nursing and therapy providers across the board that a leveling of those rates is something we need to achieve. And at the point at which we hit that single system, I think that we'll take care of that.
All right, thank you very much, Jordan. Will the proposed changes, will service recipients have access to MCO providers in addition to the DIDD providers? Patty, will you take this one?
Sure. So here's what we know is that any provider who's currently delivering services in the 1915C waivers will be deemed a credentialed provider to continue to deliver services once those 1915C waivers are a part of the managed care program. MCOs will certainly have flexibility to also add the availability of additional providers to that network. And so to the extent that there are needs to do that, that's something that they'll be able to do in terms of looking at providers who are already a part of their contracted network who are willing to also deliver services through the 1915C waivers.
All right. Okay, the next one I see we have, let me go. First of all, yes, you will have access to this PowerPoint after the webinar. We will be putting it on the IDD integration page. So yes, if you would like to review the information, it will be there. The next one, we have, let's see. Okay, I think, sorry, my mouse is kind of not cooperating with me today. Okay, yeah, okay, so the nursing and PA rates one, we already responded to that. So our residents under these new criteria from ICF to MedRes, there will be a lack of available space and experience in MedRes. How will this be overcome? Jordan, would you like to talk about this?
Yeah, sure, and Patty, please jump in wherever. So first and foremost, I want to say that nobody, regardless of the service setting that they're in, our system right now is based on supporting the needs of people that enter the system. So we're not going to, nor have we ever or would we, consider moving folks out of services that are meeting their needs. Now, we certainly will be encouraging people in ICF settings, just the same way we encourage people in every setting across the board, whether it be ICF or waiver services, to constantly be considering, understanding, and learning about the most integrated options available. And those options change as we become aware of new service approaches, models and options that allow people to achieve greater levels of independence or allow people to more effectively integrate into the community, then we introduce those services into either the waiver package of supports, and sometimes we pilot those services. As I referenced earlier, the Enabling Technology Program is a good example of that. So as residents begin transitioning from ICF model of care, similar to the way they've transitioned from ICF into medical residential or medical supported living services, or to be quite honest, we've seen some folks transition directly from ICF services into traditional supported living services because the medical acuity or the medical fragility of that person didn't require a medical residential setting. We're going to ensure that the setting is present, that it can meet their needs. No transition certainly ever occurs before the circle of support and the providers have done their due diligence and training and readying that new site for the transition, and this will be no different. As we begin to unify the process by which people are admitted into the ICF program, as we begin to assess people that are within the ICF program, expose them to more integrated options if those integrated options meet their needs, and as people then transition into whatever services that they choose, we will ensure that those services are adequately in place at the time of the transition. If you're asking me more broadly to theorize, as ICF, as people move from ICF into medical residential services or other, one of the things that I would say is that our provider network is incredibly adept at adapting to need, and if in fact the need continues to increase for medical residential services, then I have every degree of confidence that our provider network will develop capacity to support folks in that way, and they've always done that in the past, and I can't imagine this would be any different. But nobody certainly would be pushed into a service that, one, didn't meet their needs, or two, they didn't desire to move into.
Okay, I went just to get an idea of how many questions we have in respect to the time we have left. So apologize for having to search right now for these. Okay, how long will people be able to keep their current level of services after July 1, 2022? Patty, would you like to weigh in on this?
Sure, happy to do that. So again, the most important message is that starting July 1, 2021, everyone is going to keep their same plan of care, their same services, their same providers. Remember that person-centered planning is an annual process, right? And so whether or not a person keeps their current level of services will depend on the services that they need going forward. And that will happen through an individualized person-centered planning process, as it always has, in conjunction with their independent support coordinator or DIDD case manager in the case of the SD waiver and their circle of support. For people who continue to need the same level of services that they have, that's the same level of services that they'll receive going forward. And for people who need something different or who choose to benefit from some of the other options that are available to them, then their plans may change over the course of time as we would expect them to.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, how do I mute myself on this meeting format? That's a question I actually know the answer to. You do not have to mute yourself on this meeting format. Everyone who is an attendee is already muted. The only people who have the ability to unmute are me, Patty, Jordan, and Commissioner Turner. So that way we can not have some of the disruptions we've incurred in other presentations. So that one was an easy one for me. What are you doing to update the provider directory for PT services? Right now, there are no PT providers accepting new referrals in Middle Tennessee for physical therapy. Some PT providers have ceased providing therapies, and some of our service recipients are not able to get the dire needed physical therapy. That is one for Jordan.
Sure. So the department across all service sectors is constantly surveying the network and then where we notice gaps in services, and those are usually geographically based. Sometimes they are specific service based. We've had times in our past, for instance, where behavioral services grew thin in a certain region. And long story short, what we do is constantly either keep enrollment open. Right now, the department has an enrollment period 2 times per year for areas where we notice that we need additional providers. We keep that open year-round, and our clinical team, as it relates to therapy services, because that's where this question is specifically directed, reaches out even to national groups. So if we notice that our provider network is thin in a certain therapy or a certain service, then we identify groups, provider agencies that provide those supports in neighboring states, or sometimes states that don't neighbor us, but have both the ability and the desire to expand into the Tennessee market, and we solicit providers to join the network as needed. I will say that we do get if service requests have gone unfilled, or if a request is out there and a provider is not available to be able to provide that service, that information comes to us immediately, and then the department works usually through our regional offices to help locate a provider. So I do think that certainly it sounds like, Michael and Donna, your experience is that PT providers have been thin in the Middle Tennessee area. Rest assured that if a service request has been made and then there's an inability to fill that service, we're made aware of that immediately and begin working, and those instances certainly are few and far between. I certainly, from that question, will take this back to our clinical team, give them this feedback, and in the event that they need to begin recruiting PT providers more actively outside of the state of Tennessee, then I'm sure they'll do that.
Okay, the next question. Will PTs, OTs, et cetera, still provide direct services, or will they be training and overseeing staff? I will give this one to Patty Killingsworth.
Sure. Well, so we've consistently said we're not terminating any of the benefits. All of the services that are available in the waiver programs today will continue to be provided. We've also been very clear about our commitment to make sure that therapy needs, nutrition needs, nursing needs, all of those things continue to be met. We are looking at ways to make sure that we're maximizing the efficacy of that benefit, and think there's some great potential to really better leverage trained professionals to make sure that treatment services are embedded within the day-to-day delivery of services. I think there are probably things that professional therapists do that they will have to continue to do, right? Only they can really do effective assessments. Only they can really develop those treatment plans. And then I think there may be some opportunities, again, to really leverage that expertise to embed that treatment within day-to-day delivery. That doesn't mean that people won't continue to receive direct services when those direct services are needed. We are seeking feedback on this. I think we made that really clear in the integration document, that this is an area where we are seeking input from people about the best way to go about making sure that we're delivering those services in the most effective and efficient way possible.
Great, thanks so much, Patty. Okay, the next one. What is the procedure of accountability for the health, safety, and welfare of the person when the person may not be under the supervision of the provider due to participation in enabling tech or with a natural support or otherwise outside of the supervision of the provider, i.e. unsupervised time? Jordan can take this one.
Sure, thanks, Sarah. And it's a great question. I appreciate you asking, John. I think one of the things I want to tease out as this discussion continues to evolve is even the term procedure of accountability as it applies to people and their individual desires for their own services. First and foremost, obviously, as circles of support are making informed decisions, as people supported are making informed decisions about their care, there is no presumption other than the needs of that person specifically the needs that allow them to achieve the goals they identify for themselves are the procedure of accountability. There is accountability does not stretch beyond the boundaries of the desired services for the person supported. And I know that comes off, I guess in tonality, that comes off a bit shocking to some folks, but if we kind of peel the layers back on that and we think about the shift between that institutional service mindset that we've thankfully now moved away from here in the state of Tennessee, the assumption that people living with a disability that someone must be accountable for their safety, even when they possess both the skills and the desire to engage in activities independently, the assumption that there still must be someone accountable for their safety hampers the system to a degree and ultimately hampers the individual ability of people supported. And I would argue that the procedure of accountability for the system that doesn't allow people to exercise their own personal freedom has been lacking for the last 20 years. And so thankfully, we're in a position at this point where we have a set of tools that allow people with the desire and who possess the capability and want to be independent. We have tools that can allow them to achieve those measures, to assume that as people are engaging in that process, that if there is not a direct support professional or someone over their shoulder for the entirety of the time, that there needs to be accountability outside of that, I think is a great mistake, and ultimately I think imprisons people in a way that we're thankfully moved well past. So when people develop a plan of support and that plan of support includes their desire to have unsupervised time or their desire to engage with natural supports that they have defined as friends, neighbors, family, or other, or engaging in services utilizing technology that pulls away at the need for any direct support professional to be present, then that gets articulated in the plan, and ultimately the procedure of accountability falls to the risk assessment that took place before the plan was developed, the discussion that the circle of support and the person supported held when the decisions were made to develop a service plan that allows them to exercise their own personal freedom in a way that doesn't require direct support, and I think that's appropriately positioned.
Great, thanks, Jordan. I see that we have several questions right after that about where can people find the presentation, will we share it? So I am gonna take this opportunity really quickly to go to my web browser and show you all where some of this stuff can happen. So you should be able to see my screen right now. If you are looking to make comments about this, you will see on this little slider here, person-centered IDD program integration. If you go there, you'll see that we have our person-centered program integration page. We've got the joint letter, we've got IDD, the concept paper. If you're looking for the overview document, it's this one with the green underline, that stakeholder input summary, and all of the presentations we've done so far. If you go to resources, you'll find the family letters we've already written for both the 1915Cs and the Employment and Community First Choices program. We will put this presentation on this site. Another thing that you will take a look at is, see this little orange bar right there? That is IDD integration input. If you go to that, click it, you will be taken to our feedback form. And let's see if my internet is going to work for me today. Yes. So you'll answer the question, I am a person served, or any of these drop-down menus. Then we're asking you to comment on a certain area of the overview document, and you'll see all of them come up. I do want to mention that on the program benefit structure, if you press that, we have a sub box which gives you certain areas like consumer direction, ICF, IID, residential and day services. Then page number, I have a question, concern, recommendation, and then a box for those concerns and recommendations. We have put that 10 times on this form, so there's plenty of space for you all to ask different questions or address different sections of the document. If you need more space, just go ahead and fill out another form. If you don't need the space, don't worry. We just wanted to make sure people had ample spaces to ask the questions. Also, when you are done, press the submit form button at the very bottom. That is how you submit our feedback. So we hope that this will help. If I thought it might be helpful for me to share it with you all. And of course, I'm available at on my email, kara.kumari@tn.gov, or my assistant, carly.carlton@tn.gov, to navigate and help answer any questions about it. Okay, next question. What about psychological testing of caretakers to determine whether they are likely to be compassionate or abusive? Quality is critical. Jordan, do you have any thoughts on this? Or Patty, do you have any thoughts on this?
I really don't. I look at that. I guess that's more an observational comment or a suggestion. Certainly, I think that we take it under advisement. Doesn't appear to be a question.
Yeah, I would just say in terms of effective recruitment, right?
Is there any word on how and if quilts will be involved? Sorry, I wasn't on speaker at that moment. The competency-based training mentioned, is there any word on how and if quilts will be involved? I'll give that over to Patty, as TennCare has spearheaded the quilts initiative.
Sure. So QUILT is really a broad umbrella. It stands for Quality Improvement in Long-Term Services and Supports, by the way, and it really encompasses a fairly broad range of value-based payment and delivery system reform initiatives that we're doing to help move the system toward being a more person-centered delivery system. A piece of that has certainly been focused around the workforce and building the competency of that workforce across all of our programs and services. QUILT also refers to a training program and really an array of training programs that have been developed as a part of that initiative. Kind of playing back to the previous questions, right? I can't ever envision a situation where we would do psychological testing of staff, but I do think it's important that we're finding people who are right for the work, and that we're then equipping them with the skills they need to do the work, and that we know that that's actually happening. So one of the things that the QUILT's training program really does differently is it's really designed based on evidence-based practices and adult learning to make sure that people are getting the behaviors and the competencies, the skills that they really need, and that they can demonstrate those skills across a variety of settings. One of the things that's really unique about QUILT is that it includes a demonstration of competency to actually do the work. We developed that based on the CMS core competencies for direct support staff that was developed back in 2014, and actually had prepared to launch that through the community colleges and technical schools this fall, had COVID not arrived and impeded both their ability to implement, as well as the funding that we had received to be able to provide value-based workforce incentives based on the completion of that training program. So we're going to continue to press forward and look at hopefully implementing that in the future. In the meantime, we have worked with the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development and the U.S. Department of Labor to launch an apprenticeship program that will use much of the same training material and make that apprenticeship program broadly available through providers across the state. By the way, the completion of the training through that apprenticeship program is also tied to direct wage incentives as staff complete various components of the training program. And then finally, we've worked to develop some other training pieces, one of those really being a new way of approaching pre and early service learning for new workers in the field, and hope to be able to make that a training program that is applicable across all programs for people with IDD, so the 1915C waivers as well as employment and community first choices, and begin to provide a more evidence-based and competency-based approach to training staff going forward once we're ready to launch that.
Okay, Okay, and Patty, stick on the phone for just a second. The next question is about ECF, so I'm going to give it to you. What about the dollars that are in our ECF budgets that we can't access during the pandemic? Sorry, there's a lot here, so I'm just trying to see. Okay, yeah, what about the families are not being supported when they lose their DSPs due to COVID, yet the money to help families like 20 other states have done is sitting in our budget. So I guess the question is about what about the dollars that are in the ECF budget?
So appreciate this question being asked. We certainly know that COVID has had a significant impact on people with disabilities and their families across Tennessee and certainly across the country. We're doing everything that we can to try to make sure that people continue to receive the services that they need. It's certainly our expectation that providers are continuing to deliver the services that people need that are in their plans of care. We did a number of trying to think how I want to call it, wage flexibilities, if you will, essentially some wage increases, some rate increases to providers to make sure that they were able to maintain those staff and compensate those staff during the pandemic. We also have provided some specific pay when staff are supporting individuals who are COVID positive. Those things all happened a bit earlier in the pandemic when we were at a pretty critical point from a provider perspective. We've made some adjustments in our policies to allow a person who's temporarily living in the home during the pandemic to be able to provide those services. I would say that always, if a person has a service in their plan that they're not able to receive, they have an appeals process available to them, which allows us to know that that's happening and to make sure that that need is addressed. Providers are still there, they still have staff, and services are being and should be delivered, and if there are concerns with that, we certainly expect that people will elevate those to the appeals process so that we can address those.
Thanks a lot, Patty. The next question we have is about consumer direction and the benefits in allowing conservators and parents to make staff decisions. Can you talk about how that will be implemented? Jordan, do you want to take that one? Or Patty, if you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, I can certainly start off, and then Patty, you can jump in. So I think that any of you on the phone that are familiar with consumer direction now, the easy response to that is that moving consumer direction over into the two bigger waivers, the statewide waiver and the CAC, the aggregate capped waiver, will be operationalized. The service will be operationalized in the same way as the self-determination waiver. For those less familiar, it's just what it sounds to be, and it's very well stated in the question. It allows the person-supported parents and or legal conservator to essentially act as their own agent, and they can identify staff, and then certainly in the event that situation doesn't work out, then they have the ability to change staff. It's, you know, in the broader sense of empowering people to both take control of their services, ensure that those services are directed in the way that they envision for themselves. There probably is no more effective or no greater vehicle than consumer direction. Our intent by bringing it over to the bigger waivers is to offer it to a broader group of people, hopefully allow people who previously would have preferred the option to now take advantage of it. What we know for sure is as people experience the benefits and the expansion of those boundaries around their own services, that those become testimonials to others. And then as people see the success that people are achieving, and you know, this translates into employment services, it certainly translates into the transformative impact of enabling technology support. As people see someone else do it and have success, then it tends to breed curiosity amongst those who may not have thought of it before. And then those turn into new success stories. And so the intent in bringing it over is to expose a broader group of people, and we'll operationalize it the exact same way that we have in the self-determination waiver. and hopefully people take advantage of that ability to direct their own services. Patty, do you have anything? Did I miss something there you want to add?
No, I think that's fine.
All right. Well, we are going to move on then, because we have about 9 minutes left, and I want to make sure we still got a lot of questions, but I want to make sure we can answer as many of them as we can. Is there communication material out there that the providers can send to families to help them understand this integration? First of all, I would encourage everyone to share any of the letters we've sent out that help understand. Also, this presentation, please, this or the other presentation we did that's more provider focused, if that will help them. Also, I am willing to hear thoughts. If there are other documents that we should create that will help people understand what we're doing, I am open to hear them and definitely willing to do them. So yes, please, provide feedback. One of the ways that these family-focused presentations came into existence is because after we did the first provider-focused presentations, we received input from some families that they didn't understand. They didn't, and they didn't feel comfortable asking their questions in a room with a bunch of providers who had their own questions. So we wanted to make sure that we were providing opportunities for you all to have this space. So these presentations are a direct result of your feedback. So anything we can do to help and to make this understandable and accessible to people we support and families, we want to make sure that we're hearing those comments. So please feel free to provide them to us because that's very important to us. Okay, will benefits be given to DSPs? I believe that's a provider, that is a provider decision. Jordan, do you want to weigh in on that? But usually we leave it to the providers to decide, to determine personnel.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Those are private decisions made by private entities who are contracted with either the department or managed care organizations for services, and that would be outside, certainly outside of government's purview to mandate.
If someone is in a group home with 2 others and has a full-time staff present, is that considered to be an ICF IID situation? If so, are they at risk of losing their current living situation? Not necessarily. So let me give it to Jordan to expand on that.
Yeah, sure. So it's a good question. And I think to Kara's point, it speaks to why these kind of sessions are so important to have with family members and with stakeholders across the community. We so often sit down and meet with providers, and as Kara indicated, that's not always the most conducive format for questions that family members may have. So first and foremost, if 2 people or 3 people are living together in a setting, it's not the number of people that are living together in the setting that designates the service being provided. It's the service chosen. And so in this case, if there's someone living in a group home and has 2 others, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's an ICF IDD. That could very well be a supported living home over on the waiver side of the funding continuum. But regardless of how that's being funded or the model within which those services are being provided, no one is at risk of losing their current living situation. Again, if there's one thing that we can drive home in this conversation today, and hopefully in each conversation previous and hereafter, it's the fact that services are directed and delivered at the request of the person seeking services. And obviously that involves, family members and other providers and people that encompass that circle of support, as we call it, that help people make decisions. But ultimately, at the end of the day, even those on the peripheral that are assisting that person in coming to decisions about their services that can help them meet that goal, their goal needs to be ensuring that that person's voice, that their desires for their desired life are what ultimately ends up in the plan and what ultimately is effectuated in the service delivery that they receive. So the short answer, I apologize for kind of droning on there on my soapbox. The short answer is no, they are not at risk of losing their services, and it's not necessarily ICF. If they're living with 3 people, it could very well be waiver services. But most importantly is the fact that people receive the services that they need to be supported well, that they choose It's our job, it's TennCare's job, it's the managed care organizations and the provider networks together. It's our job to make sure people are aware of that next service that's available to them to help them need all of us less, because ultimately that's the goal for people. We've never yet, I've yet to meet somebody in 25, a few more years than that now, but at least 25 years of service that said, you know what I want is to be more dependent. Nobody ever told us that. And so what we need to do is continually ask, have you considered this? Did you know this is available? Did you know you can do this? And if we're doing that collectively as a community around people seeking services, then we're doing our job the right way.
Right. So unfortunately, we are out of time. We have 3 minutes left, and I know that a lot of people have things they need to get to. So before I leave, I want to say one thing. First of all, submit these comments. Please make sure that you're providing us with your input, and we are happy to do what we need to do to make sure that you all have the information you need. Second of all, Commissioner Turner is still with us and has been listening and seeing the questions come in. And so I want to thank, first of all, Jordan and Patty for being with us and doing such a great job of answering these questions. But I also want to give an opportunity for Commissioner Turner to share some final thoughts with us before we call it a day.
Thanks, Karen. Again, thank you to Jordan, especially Patty and others that have contributed to this discussion. And a number of folks that have been on this call. We were well north of 100, I think, that had jumped on, Kara, the last time I saw. And that's why we do this. We need to make sure that we get active participation from you. And I hope that you at least picked up on the level of transparency that we want to provide as the Department of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities and Division of TennCare, that it's important for us to understand what your feedback looks like. So thank you for challenging us with the questions that you've provided, and I hope, my hope is and my ask is of you to just give us a chance. Let us work with you on what this program is going to look like. And if you've got questions about it, ask us about it. It's easy sometimes, I think, to pick up on speculation and to let fear drive a lot of our conversation. And as I said at the beginning, I'm a parent. Patty is a parent. We understand exactly where you're coming from when you're talking about the impact that a program might have on your loved one, because that's what drives our work every day is how do we make sure that you know that we're providing the right support for someone that you care about more than anyone else in the world. So as we do that, continue to work with us, allow us to partner with you and create something that's going to make Tennessee the envy of the country in the types of integrated services that we're going to be delivering. And what I'm really excited about as we wrap up is it's a new day as we're moving forward, and the opportunity for Tennesseans with disabilities to be able to show themselves what they can do. Because for so long, in many cases in their life, they've been told what they can't do. But for the first time, we're really going to drive home the point about what they can do and what they want to do, and how all of us are going to partner with them to make sure that they've got every opportunity that you and I are afforded to live out their dreams. So thank you again for participating. Please continue to keep your eyes open on communications from Kara's team and from the TennCare team related to opportunities for feedback. I know there's been a lot of questions about what ifs and how to's and have you thought about this. That's why we're doing these, is to make sure that you provide us that type of conscious thinking around areas that we need to make sure that we address. But as we get them in, I promise you this is not going to be the last time you're going to have the opportunity to talk to us. So continue to share your information, your feedback with us, because it is a partnership that we're all engaged in together. And I'll wrap up by saying this. I drive this home a lot of times with folks that the old saying goes, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And we need you in this. I need you in this to be a good partner with us as we build a system that's going to be delivering these types of supports. So thank you for engaging with us. With that, I'll turn it back to Kara. Thanks, everyone.
Two quick things housekeeping things I'm going to mention really quickly. First of all, how can you learn about new opportunities for feedback and all of these things? First of all, follow DIDD on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Although Facebook seems to be a place where a lot of our families like to find out information. Also, you can subscribe to our open line newsletter, and you can email Carly Carlton if you would like to do that. Finally, On our IDD integration page, I see that someone wanted to know how can they submit feedback if they don't have a computer. We will put a mailing address for the office so that I can receive the comments. I do come into the office, so that means I can get mail. So I will, if you would like to mail feedback to me, if you do not have the ability to do it via a computer, we will have my mailing address at the office on there so that you all can submit comments that way. So with that, thank you all very much. We will provide more opportunities, and we appreciate your time and the ability to have this conversation with you. Goodbye.